Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to this Conversations in Careers interview. I'm Jazz, and I'm the Member Engagement Manager at One Nucleus, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Sue Keogh, who is the Director and an absolute digital specialist for a company called Sue Keogh.
Yeah.
So yeah, really looking forward to kind of diving into this interview today and learning a little bit more about your career journey. So thank you. And I'm going to hand you over to Sue now and see if you could introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you currently do and how you got there.
Okay. Yeah. Hi, everybody. So my name is, as you picked up on, Sue Keogh, and the company is called Sookio. So, there is a link in how I developed the company name. And we are a digital marketing agency based in Cambridge, and we focus very much on strategy. So coming up with the communication strategy, focusing on digital. We'll deliver content around it. So we do lots of copywriting. We'll produce video content. We've been in a lot of labs lately, and taking beautiful footage of close-ups of devices and animations on cancer treatments and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, lots of content creation, but then training as well. So we train comms teams on how to be even better at their job. So it's this really nice mix of the strategy, content creation, and training. And working with a lot of clients in life sciences and technology, but also education, public sector, the sort of sectors that we call knowledge intensive, where we can help them articulate often quite complex concepts quite simply.
Amazing. I like that term, knowledge intensive.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because a lot of agencies can be quite sector specific, and we're not really sector specific, it's more problem specific. So I developed this tagline recently, which is untangle your thinking. And this ties in with the kind of expression that is on people's faces when they come and see us. This kind of, they're drowning in spreadsheets and they're overwhelmed by different platforms and they're not sure which direction to go in. And it's this kind of knotty, oh, can you help us with this? And so it's more around solving that problem than, focusing on one core sector. But people do tend to be in this kind of academic, legal, technical, scientific kind of framework. Economists, we work with economists, and they all share that sort of similar challenge.
Amazing. And how did you get to Sookio then? So what led you towards this digital marketing, digital content creating career?
Yeah, well, I don't have any qualifications in marketing. I said that to someone the other day on my team, and he said, "Oh, hang on, what?" I didn't realize that. But I actually started out working in radio. I did a degree in communication studies with Spanish, and then started working radio production. So that was all working in specialist music, actually. So I was doing everything from helping produce the Radio 2 folk show, A Night from Rio, which I didn't go, but did all the production in the background, and or obituaries on Dusty Springfield, or series about the music of Route 66, all that sort of stuff. And that was around the time, it was on the cusp really between analog and digital. So we were still cutting programs on reel to reel tape, and that kind of thing. And then gradually the digital things came in. And I moved to running, don't laugh, but the the Radio 2 country music website, because one of the shows that we
Wow.
produced was a country show. So I moved there, but then sadly, it grew and grew, and then BBC changed its mind about what it wanted to do. I was made redundant, moved to ITV, and then they had a similar thing where two huge departments merged, and then a load of people were made redundant. So I had this situation where I was made redundant twice in 2 months. I might come back to some of this in a second and tell you more about it. But then as a result of that, went freelance, and then because this is when all the digital and social media stuff was just starting out. And I was really fascinated by it. And I was a lot younger, and this is all new and exciting and brilliant. Whereas people in the career level above me were still thinking, oh, what's happening to all this stuff that I know, and particularly in broadcast circles. Hang on, we're just used to radio and telly. What's all this new media and digital stuff that's coming in? Whereas for me, oh, great, I'll teach myself how to code, and I'll learn about Twitter. This seems exciting, And so gradually people started to give me more and more freelance contracts. I was very because I had two small children, which is another thing I might come back to in a second. Um, because of that, I was taking on lots of small contracts all over the place, which, although at the time felt like, oh, hang on, I should be working full time somewhere, it actually meant that I was quite flexible and I could take on these smaller part-time jobs and just lots of them.
Mhm.
So I became a homepage editor for Yahoo, doing lots of out of hours content, um, website editor for Magic FM. At one point, I was running or sort of helping build a recipes website and just sort of loads of random stuff. And then over time, realized, oh, okay, I don't seem to be going back to full-time employment. I am my employment. And registered the company, came up with a company name just like that because
Mm.
I'd got married and no one could spell my surname, my new name, and just kind of built it around that. And yeah, gradually picked up all of this work. And I think because I've always been really curious and really kind of hungry to learn and really
Mm.
keen to share that knowledge, then this is why over the years people have come to us because they recognize that the industry is changing all the time. So they come to us for our expertise because they know that we're interested, but we're also keen to share it so that other people can learn as well.
Mhm.
So yeah, so over the years, I realized, hang on, I appear to be running a business. And then, oh, this is an agency, isn't it? Because we're dealing with lots of different projects, different clients.
Mm.
All these things that mean is a marketing agency, not just a business where you work full time in communications just for one client, who is your employer. Realized, oh yeah, it's an agency. Okay, great, good. That's what I'm doing. Finally, the penny drops. So yeah, that's a
Amazing.
long story.
Very interesting, and also quite an unusual
Yeah,
career, but
yeah,
it's you can kind of see how different parts of the career,
yeah.
that kind of creative side, the storytelling side,
Mm,
they all
mm,
kind of link together quite nicely to
yeah,
help shape where you are
yeah,
today, which is yeah, really
yeah.
interesting. So did you say that you studied Spanish as well at university?
Yes, yeah. So my A
Wow.
levels were English literature,
Hmm.
Spanish, and economics. And
Hmm.
then I had a year out, did a bit of traveling around Spain on
Hmm.
my own, managed to wangle a job. How long was it? About 5 months at the local newspaper as a promotions and marketing assistant, which is great.
Hmm.
And then, yeah, university. It was Anglia Polytechnic University at the time, and yeah, communication studies there. And I think I was in
Hmm.
the second year of that degree starting up. Um, and I think because I have worked in so many different places along the way, then that's really helped now because I've been able to see how different organizations communicate outwardly, but also what it's like internally as well. And I
Hmm.
think running an agency, you have to just quickly, just all the time, get the measure of people, the company, what they're trying to get across, the messages, what their
Hmm.
challenges are. And yeah, so sometimes for people, if you've worked in house for a long time, moving to working in an agency can be a bit of a shift,
Hmm.
so particularly for us, Cambridge as an area, the university itself is quite dominant, not just putting out this world-class research and everything, but so many residents in the town are students and it's a huge employer as well. And so sometimes if people have worked at the university, then they move into agencies, it's just quite it's a different mindset shift. I was saying to someone the other day that you've always got to get approval from Henry VIII before you can do it. Whereas with us, we can just move so quickly, and that's why it's so exciting working in a marketing agency because you just come up with ideas and you can just do them. This is why we did so well during the pandemic because we didn't have a big long chain of command. There was no long chain of decisions to be made, and we had to think really quickly all the time because there were huge challenges, say around video. We were doing a load of filming with a district council, and of course everything was under lockdown, and so we had to work out how the hell are we going to go on this film shoot and capture these interviews with people, or working in sciences. There were things that we needed to do that involved going into labs, but of course the labs had to be really really sterile in a way that they were sterile before, but now there are all these other regulations around it as well. And so we had to be quite inventive all the time. But then that's what makes it exciting because then you're continually put on the spot and made to think of different avenues and different routes to get where you want to go. Which is why I think we all find it quite exciting. No day's the same at our place.
For somebody that's maybe considering a career in life sciences, working with a digital creative agency on producing like marketing material, these videos, these content might not be their first idea when they think about working in life sciences, but just how important is communications within life sciences?
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good question, because it's a career that you might not consider is there. In fact, my son is about to go and do a degree in chemistry, so I've been seeing it from his angle as well, and realizing that, well, how would he know what careers are out there? Because you just, until you're actually in it, you don't know. And there's all sorts of other things, like people that I meet in Cambridge that do IP, intellectual property, and that's the kind of thing where you wouldn't really know that's a career related, that's you think it's just being purely in a lab. And so the role of communications is just so important, and it can help you with every step of the way. So from maybe landing the funding for a clinical trial, and clinical trials are just huge. The amount of work that goes into securing them and proving that they are, valuable, and just is years of research as well, isn't it? And getting the funding for it. So being able to communicate that idea so that it can even go ahead is really important. And then for us, we work at the other end. So once the clinical trial has happened, once the research is complete, then we see it quite a lot where people might have been working, beavering away in the lab or in, doing their academic research for 7 years. And then, yay, it's commercialized and it's able to go to market. And they kind of come out blinking into the sunlight thinking, oh, good God, now I've actually got to sell this thing. I'm not used to that. And so quite often the people that we work with, they're so heavily immersed in it that it's really difficult for them to articulate it. So that's when they come to people like us. So to answer your question, if you are someone that really understands the sciences and you are also a good communicator, then that is brilliant, because that same person that's been beavering away in the lab, they also, they're really emotionally connected to this stuff. The sort of people that you meet in Cambridge, you just randomly bump into people that are trying to develop a cure for multiple sclerosis or something. They're not going into this work lightly. So they don't want to talk to a communications agency where the people are talking about, I don't know, influencer marketing and hashtags and TikToks and being really silly with it. They want someone who has got a bit of gravitas, can speak the language, maybe doesn't have a PhD in genomes or whatever, but can still, they can converse with, and who they can trust to actually relay that idea. So if you've got a scientific background, but you're feeling, well, I don't know if I actually want to be the person in the lab developing whatever, research or treatment or condition, whatever we're talking about, but you're really good at articulating and you're creative and you like meeting people, that's a big part of it, then actually that could be this sort of, hidden career that's out there for you that you don't realize is there. So I think there's a real need for it. And it's not a very competitive space, I don't think, as well. When it comes to communications, if you want to work in retail, you want to work in fashion, you want to work in music, it's just overly saturated. Everybody wants to do that. Whereas if you say, well, actually, my degree was in some sort of physics or chemistry or life sciences, some sort of scientific field, and you say, well, actually, I think I want to go into marketing or communications, then there isn't lots of competition, and there is actually quite a need for it. So there's definitely that option out there for you.
So just going back to your career, I mean, you did lots and lots of wonderful different things, but what kind of challenges have you faced along the way?
Oh yeah, so earlier when I said, oh yeah, I'll come back to that. So the thing about being made redundant twice in 18 months. So the second time was when I was at ITV, and then I realized in the same week that I was pregnant. So it's not the case that they discovered I was pregnant and then sacked me. It wasn't one of those stories. But It was one of those things where I knew that the redundancies were happening, but I also, because it was only me at itv.com pretty much left. And so I kind of felt, a couple of people had said, well, they can't get rid of you because you're the only one left. And so I thought, oh, maybe they're right. Anyway, they were wrong. And then the same week I realized that I was pregnant. And this is also sort of just before the last recession happened as well. And so it very much felt like a challenge, and it felt like the industry is really building up. You know, it was, I mean, as the sort of the internet landscape is now, it's all filled. You know, you've got these huge players now like Amazon and you know, all the, and what Microsoft are doing, and Google, obviously, that it feels really fixed now. Whereas back in 2003 sort of time, it wasn't. It was still this big, you know, big open landscape that, and everyone was very experimental, and all this new exciting stuff was happening. And I felt like, oh God, you know, here I am in Ely with a baby. Oh, you know, it's all going wrong. But I think from that, it's given me this level of resilience and I'm just not fazed by things. I also lost both my parents in my 30s as well, sort of relatively close together. You know, I've got two kids. In fact, that period in my life was a period of sort of doubles. So losing my job twice, losing both parents, having two children, and all of that. You just continually kind of being knocked back, but picking yourself back up again, and realizing that you can kind of take anything that's thrown at you. And this is why, I mean, everything's going all upside down with the economy and Brexit and COVID, and you know, it just feels never ending. Whereas I'm just not fazed by it, because I think because I've had so many knockbacks and I've had to pick myself up so much, and I suppose because I've worked with so many different people in different places, then I'm just used to it. Whereas I think for a lot of people who maybe founded an organization between economic crises, before Brexit, before everything just started to go crazy, right now they're probably just doing their, you know, just going mad themselves. Like, why is it all gone wrong? Whereas I think for me, because I started off when things were really badly wrong, and then I've been through a period where it all got better, and then it went wrong again. It's just keeps on happening. It's just, and it'll probably happen again. So yeah, I think having those moments when you're knocked back and then picking yourself back up again are actually really, yeah, really good long term, even though it feels awful at the time. You know, when I was made redundant the first time, I was really upset about it, because it was part of my identity. It was quite like a family business, you know, felt really hurtful. And then the second time, I just said to them, well, what are you playing at? What are you doing? Because I knew it was all political. I knew it was all, you know, one guy, you know, several rungs of the ladder above me, just trying to get his own back on someone else. You know, it was nothing to do with me. And I was just really annoyed about it. I walked out of the ITV building pregnant some months later, and just looked back at the building and thought, well, you know, can't swear on this, but for God's sake, you know, why is this happening out of my control? But you just kind of, if you prepare for things, if you just kind of assumed that things will go wrong, it's not being pessimistic, but you're just preparing for it, because things will, you know, no one's life is ever a complete bed of roses. So yeah, that might be helpful.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. That is, yeah, it's so helpful actually, and really quite inspirational. So yeah, and amazing. So throughout your career, is there something that, I mean, off the back of those challenges, that you're really kind of grateful for learning around the resilience? Is there somebody that maybe you've met that played a really big role in your career?
I mean, lots of people really that I look up to. I mean, locally, every time I come across, do you know Dr. Soraya Jones and what she's done on the tech scene, and just her general upbeat manner, and you know, I like seeing women supporting other women, and it's something that I try and do a lot. I mean, not just women actually, helping younger people getting into the industry, because I have a big bee in my bonnet about the whole kind of unpaid internship type thing.
Mm.
And I try and level the playing field where I can there. We run our own week of remote work experience that we've done for 3 years now. So it'll be the fourth year this year. So we've seen about 60 young people coming through that, and going on to great careers, really brilliant starting
Amazing.
careers. And so, but yeah, in terms of what did you say? What have I learned from it, or
Something that you're grateful for?
grateful for? I think it is that realization that sometimes when it feels like the worst thing that could ever happen, that one day you'll look back on it and not laugh, but that you'll be thankful for the path it led
Mhm.
you down. I mean, being the whole redundancy thing, the first when it happened, and the second time when I was pregnant, I was walking down the street thinking, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know, here I am at, how old was I? Like very late 20s, 27 or something. Um, and just think, I don't know what I'm doing. I thought I knew where I was going, and now I don't know where I'm going. I feel like the rug has been taken from under my feet. I don't really know. There's another time where I had to sue someone, and that was awful. Um, it's such a good story. It's for the pub.
Oh.
But I had to sue, I'll give you this very short version. I had to sue the Coronation Street musical, for a very nasty, fraudulent thing. And I've never got the money back. And it was all awful. It was all really awful. And it was so stressful. And,
Mm.
and I did think at the time, one day I'll look back and laugh at this. And then it's this story that I keep on never quite getting around to telling anybody because it's quite long and involved. But I ended up telling my hairdresser a couple of weeks ago, because she said to me, "Oh, have you ever got any in any kind of legal scandals or whatever?" And I said, "Yeah, there was this time that I had to sue Coronation Street musical," and so I told her all about it, and then we were really really laughing, and I said, "Yeah, at the time I always thought one day I'll look back and laugh at this, and then here I am, finally laughing because it was so stressful." And I think it's one thing I learned from that was that you've always got to you need to focus on the good people, the good stuff. So if something bad happens to you, or someone is being fraudulent and nasty and aggressive to you, um, it's really easy for that to take all of your attention. Whereas during that period, I made sure that all of the good clients, because we've got loads of brilliant clients who we adore, that I really had to shift my attention over to them, because I thought, well, if I don't do that, then these people that are being so nasty and aggressive, then they've won, if you like, and I need to stop thinking about them. It's a bit like years ago, I did a first aid course, and there's a thing there that I learned as well about business inadvertently. So we had to do one of those exercises where everyone pretends to be in some awful, horrendous accident, and so you have to work out what you do in a first aid, scenario. And so what I learned from that is that you don't go to the people that are screaming and yelling out. You go to the quiet ones, because they're the ones that are actually in trouble. Whereas the ones that are screaming and screeching, they're probably going to be all right in a minute. And I kind of apply that to business as well, that you always just try and look after people all the time. Don't just fight fires, and don't just go running to the people that are jumping up and down screaming. So I always try and make sure that I look after the team, that everyone's happy all the time, have lots of one-to-ones. In terms of clients, try and make sure that people are looked after, that we check in with them all the time, instead of just waiting for something to go wrong. And then, oh God, how can we put that right? I'm kind of continually trying to make sure that everything is right all the time before people have to ask. And I suppose if you're looking for work, you can also take that approach in terms of building networks and keeping an eye on companies that you want to work for. So instead of not thinking about it at all until, oh, suddenly I need a job, because maybe you've lost a role, or maybe you're not happy anymore, taking that approach where you're just continually keeping your eyes open and thinking, okay, well, that's a place that I'd like to go and work. So I'll start connecting with people who work there on LinkedIn now, even though it's much further down the line. So yeah. I think I've got slightly off track.
That was amazing. No, thank you. And I can't wait to hear this story.
I know, it's honestly, if I ever get that money back, I am taking
Oh.
everyone down to the fanciest hotel in Cambridge, and we're just going to drink champagne all afternoon. It was
Amazing. I'm going to
awful. Yeah.
manifest that all day today.
Yeah, definitely.
Amazing. So we are so lucky that you're going to be joining us at our careers
Yes.
conference at the end of March. And
Yeah.
the particular session is creating a good first and lasting
Mm,
impression.
mm.
So just to kind of give us a bit of a preview, how
Yeah.
important is a first impression for you?
Yeah, well, I do a lot of hiring nowadays. So, as you know, I've just kind of alluded to, I've had a few points in my career where I've been on the other side of the table, and I've been going around, going to loads of interviews. Some of some of the time being pregnant at the time, so having that kind of hope no one notices kind of feel. So even though now I am the person that does the hiring, um, what people often don't realize is actually I have been on the other side of it a lot myself. And the thing about first and last impressions is that it is so important. And what I'm seeing at the moment, as someone who does the hiring, is that all of a sudden covering letters have gone out of fashion. It's crazy. So all I get, and you wouldn't know this from the other side. So all I get is people just clicking apply, apply. And even though I've got it there in the first paragraph about the role, please send me a covering letter, and just anything, because what a CV tells me is where people have come from. But what a covering letter, or even just any sort of note or email, it doesn't have to be an old-fashioned covering letter format. But what that tells me is where someone's going, because otherwise I might look at the CV and think, oh, they haven't got the right experience. But then what additional communication will tell me is actually they've got a private passion for social media, or they've got a brilliant Instagram account, or they've been doing some training on the side, and they're desperate to get into video production or something. So this whole first and last impression thing, number one, try and if there's a role that you really want, really try and give the employer, the hiring manager, some context around it. Yeah, and it doesn't mean you have to write it out in fountain pen on a letter and send it by post with a pretty stamp. But this approach could be through LinkedIn. It could be finding an email address separately via the website. And this whole first impression thing, when you're working in communications, you need people that can communicate. So I'm not just being difficult. I'm not just saying, I want a covering letter because, I'm some sort of, being demanding. But I don't run a company producing tins of beans or something. It's communications. So I am assessing people from that very first moment that they communicate with me. So the more they communicate, the better I get a sense, and then I can also get a sense for where they're headed as well. And as a business owner, then I might be thinking, oh, okay, well, we're not offering this particular thing at the moment, but I've been really wanting to for ages. So this person, their CV says this. Oh, but the covering letter says that they can do this. Oh, brilliant, So that first impression thing, you wouldn't know it, but everyone out there at the moment is being useless. They're just sending their CV in just one click and then assuming they're going to get a job at the end of it. No, be the 5% of people that goes that tiny extra mile. I'm not asking much, and send some sort of additional context. And then the other thing at the other end is, and call me old fashioned, but good manners are just really important. So if someone comes to me for an interview and then emails after to say thank you, I just love it. I absolutely love it. And equally, when I've done an interview with someone, if they don't get the job, then I always send a really nice, encouraging email back and say, thank you so much for your time. And, we've had a strong field of candidates, and, and if people want feedback, I can give them more feedback. But I'm always really encouraging. And most of the time, people don't reply. And I think, yeah, but that was 2 hours of my time as well as yours. And another thing that people don't realize is that other business owners come to me and say, oh, do you know anyone, I need someone who's a pay-per-click specialist or something. And I'll think, oh, yeah, well, I've just had a hiring round. So I'll look through the CVs and I could forward some people your direction. But then if people haven't said thank you, or if they've been a bit rude during the whole process, then I'll think, well, no, because it reflects badly on me. Whereas I've had it in the past, this lovely girl, came for a role with us and didn't quite get it, not because she wasn't good, but for various reasons she wasn't the right fit for this role, or the role wasn't the right fit for her. And then the next day, someone in the charity sector said, "Oh, I don't suppose you know any digital marketing people?" And I said, "Yeah, I had this girl in yesterday. She's brilliant, and it wasn't quite right for this role, but why don't I put you in touch?" And then she got the job working for them.
Wow.
So I think what early job seekers need to know is that there's a load of stuff that goes on behind the scenes that they can't see. So the more, if you can, have good manners, be on time for interviews, follow up with a thank you, send that lovely covering letter or some sort of note, and make that good impression from start to finish, not solely in the interview, all the stuff around the edges, then it's easy. This stuff is easy, but it gives you quite an advantage over everybody else because most people aren't doing it. I'm literally having to contact people at the moment and say, "Would you mind sending me a covering letter?" I mean, make an effort. If they can't be bothered to do that, then they're not going to be proactive with clients, which is my main concern. If they can't go the extra mile when they're applying for the role with us, then that says to me they're not going to prepare for client meetings, or they might be rude to clients. And, anyone that's rude to our clients can not interested. So yeah, I hope that's
It's really
helpful.
interesting to hear it from your perspective, actually,
Yeah.
because there is a lot that goes on that you don't
Yeah.
realize when you're looking for a job. I remember when
No.
I was looking for a job, and
Mm,
it's quite an overwhelming
mm.
position to be in when you send out hundreds sometimes of applications for
Yeah.
these positions, and it's you don't realize what's going on behind the scenes, but it's
Yeah.
important to find a right fit for both you and but also the
Yeah.
company.
No, actually, can I add something to that as well? That in terms of your time, and I know how exhausting it is, and you just get so jaded from the whole thing. But in
mm,
terms of time, you're much better off spending all your time trying to apply for, say, 5 jobs that you really like the look of, instead of
mhm,
just pressing send on 100.
mhm,
Because it won't make, you could press send on 200 and you'll still get the same outcome.
mhm,
Whereas if you spend that little bit more dedicated time, what I love seeing is that someone has actually spent time to go on a website, maybe look at me, my background, look at the work that we do. The thing that makes my heart absolutely sink when I always do a phone interview, then invite people in face to face. So when I ask people in the phone interview what led them to apply, and they say because it's local, I just want to end the call straight away. I was like, "Oh, really? Is that it?" Whereas if someone says, "I went on the website, I
mhm,
saw these case studies that you've got, I saw that you work with all these amazing companies in life sciences, and I've got a science background, and it's my chance to do communications relating to science, for example." You think, "Oh, brilliant, great, someone that gets it." Because the other thing that people don't realize is that I think it's something like 99% of businesses are small businesses.
mhm,
So it's not as if every company you apply to has got this huge HR department and all these
mm,
robots that are just screening interviews and in this very unhuman way. Most of the time, it's people like me that have bent over backwards, bust a gut for years and years. I've just told you my story about how the business started, to build up this company. So we really care about who joins. And it's not a case that people are just going to, I don't want someone just to rock up who hasn't put any effort into the application process, because, it means that they won't really care about the other stuff that we do. So, yeah, I think being aware that actually there is a real person on the other end of your application can be quite cheering. And then also knowing that if you just shift your focus, so if you imagine all the time you spend on applying for jobs, and shift it so that like 80% of it is on a smaller handful of roles, instead of 100% of it just sending a crap CV to 100 different companies, then you might get better results. At least I hope you do.
mhm. Definitely. I think that is such important advice and something that I learned the hard way. I think I
Yeah.
wasted a lot of time
Yeah.
at the beginning of my job search, just kind of panicking and
Yeah.
trying to send as many CVs out
Yeah.
as I could, but I
What
think
did
that's,
you
yeah.
do differently with this role that you're in now? How did you get that?
Well, I spent a lot of time researching into the company,
Mm.
and also, so my background isn't life sciences,
Yeah, yeah.
but I have lots of wonderful friends and
Mm.
family that do work in life sciences. So I spoke to them, and they helped me massively. And one
Mm.
friend in particular sat down with me, and we did a mock interview together. And I
Mm.
think without that, I definitely wouldn't be here.
Mm. Mm.
So yeah, it made a huge difference.
Yeah,
Huge
yeah.
difference.
Yeah, I think anything you can do to show some sort of connection with the company. So
Mhm.
with the radio production company that I worked in, I mean, I've always been really, really into music, lots of different genres, and very, very into music, and have always gone to gigs and stuff since I was quite young, and all of that. And then in the interview itself, it almost felt too obvious to mention. It almost felt like
Mhm.
I was being a bit of a creep, you know. And
Mhm.
so when they said, "Oh, is there any, why do you particularly want the job?" or something at the end, if you've got any questions or something. And I thought, oh God, am I going to be too, if I mention this? And I said, well, I'm just really into music, so I'd really love the opportunity to work with a company that does music all day long, and
Mhm.
and that's how I got the job, because the same as me now, they were really passionate about music. They had loads of just guitars and banjos and stuff in the studio that where we worked, and this is their life, this is what they loved. And so to
Mhm.
have someone sitting there for, it was a PA job, so kind of personal assistant, also production assistant, sort of a bit of both. So to have someone there who loved music, it was just great. That's what they wanted. But to me, it felt like, oh God, how embarrassing. I just said this. And I also did it in the ITV interview where they said, have you got any questions? And I said, a bit not naively, but I said, well, I just really want this job, because I couldn't think of anything else to ask. I wasn't very prepared. Well, I was prepared, but I didn't think of any questions to ask. And and that's how I got the job, because they wanted to give the job to someone who wanted the job. you know,
It makes complete sense, because if you don't
yeah,
enjoy what you do every
yeah,
day and find it fascinating and
yeah, yeah,
interesting,
yeah,
how are you going to last?
yeah, yeah. But for you
um,
as a job seeker, it feels a bit kind of, God, how
yeah.
embarrassing to admit this. It looks like it makes you feel a bit, yeah, a bit silly, a bit like cringe,
Mhm.
whereas it's exactly what I want to hear. And there was, in one of the interviews I did this week, actually, I just offered a job to someone yesterday, and
Oh.
she asked me about what the day-to-day role would be, and I was telling her some of the things, and there was one element, and she said, oh, I would just love to do that. And I thought, great, good, because that's what you're going to be doing. So, but yeah, but when you're on the other side, it just feels a bit, yeah,
Mm,
how
it's
embarrassing to
daunting.
say this, but do it, because that's what employers want to hear. They want someone in the role that is going to enjoy what they're doing and is going to stay. Because
Mhm.
hiring, it just takes up so much time as a small business owner. So the people that you do employ, you want them to be a good fit, you want them to be good at the job, you want to see
Mhm.
that they're hungry to learn so that they can progress. You want them to be on time, you want them to be well mannered, and you also want them to be enjoying what they're doing, because God knows we all spend enough time of our lives in work. So I personally, I want to create a company where I'm having a great time, and so is everyone else, and we're doing brilliant work.
Mhm.
That's all we want at the end of the day, isn't it? And get paid. Forgot that bit, but yeah.
Amazing. So this has been brilliant, and I've thoroughly enjoyed this, and you've shared so much amazing advice. And if possible at all for you to kind of round off on one final piece of advice for an early career seeker or somebody that's
Yeah,
maybe considering a role in life sciences, what might that be?
I'm going to give you three things, but briefly. So yeah, number one, build your networks early.
Mhm.
So there's people I'm in touch with now that I first met 20 years ago. I just never assumed it'd be like that. Build your networks early, build your portfolio. So I've always taken screen grabs of work that I've done. And if you work in digital or communications or web or anything like that, your work disappears. It's quite upsetting. But websites close, people overwrite what you do. So you be responsible for that, because no one else is going to do it for you. And then the last thing is, when you're in your early part of your career, say yes to everything. Get all the experience you can. Say yes to everything. And then as you get older, start saying no to things. So I say no to a lot more things nowadays than I did. It's almost flipped, so people ask me to be in their podcast and I think, yeah, it's a rubbish podcast, isn't it? You're only doing this because we've got bigger sort of reach than you. Or clients come to us and I think there's something iffy about this. Someone came to us with a PPE contract during the pandemic that just seemed off to me. He'd suddenly gone in, he was in aviation and now he's suddenly selling PPE. Hang on, and things like that we say no to. And sometimes we have a really clear criteria, like it's not the right sector or something like that. Or sometimes we'll just say, no, it just smells bad, thanks. We're not doing that. Whereas in the earlier part of my career, I was saying yes to everything. I was working all hours, and that's what's helped me get to where I am and where we are now. So yeah, build your networks early, build your portfolio because no one else is going to do it for you, and say yes to everything. It's my tips.
That has been brilliant. Thank you so much, Sue.
Pleasure.
And I can't wait for the session
It's going to
at
be
the
good,
conference. It'll be brilliant. But yeah, and I hope everybody that listens to this found that just as useful as I did. We look forward to seeing you at the conference.
Yeah, great. Really looking forward to it. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you.
Oh, and if anyone wants to connect on LinkedIn, then do that, because then I can just continue with the tips.
Sue posts amazing content, so absolutely do.
Thank you. Okay, bye.